Joining us are Roger Hartley, Dean of the College of Public Affairs at the University of Baltimore, and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Adam Ruther of Rosenberg Martin Greenberg. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you for being here.
Our pleasure.
Thanks.
So where do we stand? How much danger, Adam, do you think the president is in from a legal standpoint?
Well, at the risk of giving the obvious answer from a lawyer, it depends. But what it depends on is how the rest of the investigation shakes out. What you're seeing is the classic federal prosecutor's investigative playbook working its magic. You're seeing other players, people in sort of satellite orbit of the president, coming under investigation in their own right. You're seeing investigations getting spun off of the core of the investigation that Robert Mueller is running. And what we don't know, and the reason that I say it depends, is what's coming out of those side investigations, what they're learning from people like Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort, and how much those individuals are giving information that we don't know about at this point that's ultimately going to come to light that may result in a much more serious situation for the president. So at the moment, what we see is sort of a focusing, a targeted investigation that looks like it's getting closer and closer to the president. So right. Things are getting interesting.
So that's the legal jeopardy. The political jeopardy, Roger?
It's really big, to be honest. The political jeopardy is huge. I mean, one thing to think about is that the economy's terrific right now. Unemployment is as low as it's been in a very long time, but yet the president's numbers are still down in the low 40s. And it's all in the low 40s because of things like trust, because of this investigation, the Stormy Daniels scandal, and many others. If the economy is humming along like it is right now, in most in the political world, the president should be wildly popular right now. Upcoming elections as well, the Republican Party is really trying to figure out what to do here to some degree. They're facing a very tough challenge, especially with losing so many individuals to retirement and a lot of seats that are now open seats that they have to defend, that they didn't expect to defend, and they have a very unpopular president, even despite all of this great news on the economy. So I think as this investigation continues to play out, if the bombs start dropping here soon or throughout the summer, Republicans are going to have to decide, do we stay married to the president and the base that comes with him, that loves him, or do we move along and take our licks in the election?
And with the results of the election comes the ability of a potentially democratically led House of Representatives to impeach the president.
Absolutely, and critical, not just even the issue of impeachment, which, as we know, is really incredibly hard to do, but just the fact that the Democrats on those committees that have been doing the investigations have not been able to call the witnesses that they would like to. They would have broad investigatory power, and they would do it with a lot of zeal, I think, if they get power again. And if both the Senate and the House shift, and Senate is much less likely to do so, you now have both the Senate and the House doing those investigations at the same time.
Well, speaking of calling witnesses, Adam, is there any chance that the Mueller team doesn't subpoena the president at some point?
There's certainly a chance. The president could end up putting himself in a great deal more jeopardy than he would have otherwise been if he voluntarily comes forward, as he's said publicly he was inclined to do. And I think that his attorneys are probably encouraging him very strongly not to do that. Because as anybody who's ever been close to a federal investigation can tell you, it's often not the crime, it's the cover-up that causes the real problems here. And as we saw with President Clinton in his impeachment, again, it was statements made that were proved to be demonstrably false that this president had struggled with before. That may ultimately put him in more obvious hot water. I mean, that would be a much more straightforward investigation. It would be a much more straightforward set of criminal charges or basis for impeachment than even the real source of all of this, which is a much more amorphous investigation into potential Russian involvement in the election. So things could get a lot more straightforward for the prosecutorial end of things if the president ends up having to go under oath.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question for our panel about what's happening with the Mueller investigation, the Trump administration, give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen. You could also tweet your questions. The Twitter address is @MPT News. So if there could be a voluntary interview, or there could be a subpoena. If there's a subpoena it's been asserted that the president could claim his Fifth Amendment rights or otherwise refuse. Would that work?
It would. The president doesn't have any less Fifth Amendment right than you or I do. And so if the president is asked a question under examination, under oath, and he has a good faith basis to believe that if he answers that question truthfully, it will incriminate him in some way, either in an investigation that's already ongoing or in an investigation that may come later on. If he has a good faith basis to believe that, after advice of counsel, he can refuse to answer those individual questions.
So it has
absolutely.
to be individual questions. You can't just walk in and assert a blanket Fifth Amendment right and
Exactly.
see you later.
Until you are actually charged, you do not have the Fifth Amendment privilege to refuse to sit in the chair, but you can refuse to answer individual questions. Again, if you have a good faith basis to believe that your answers will incriminate you.
Of course, the issue with that is, and this is kind of what's so fascinating about this whole process, is that the legal process moves at a deliberative, slow pace with real process, and the political process changes day to day and is shaped by spin doctors and others. I mean, in the case of a president taking the Fifth Amendment, everything you said absolutely right on, but how does that look politically? I mean, you see even today news organizations running clips of when the president said, yeah, if you take the Fifth, you're guilty. And so now he's in a position where he's hearing himself on news organizations saying, if you take the Fifth, you're presumed to be guilty. It would look really, really bad for a president to do that or have to do that if subpoenaed and have to take that Fifth Amendment.
So is that why the Trump legal team seems to be shifting gears a little bit and trying more to demonize Mueller, particularly Mueller's team in the special counsel's office?
Absolutely. They have been all along. And again, the whole idea is that, and Adam and I were talking about this a little bit before, we don't know a lot of the facts that are out there that could come out later. But that's also powerful for a person that wants to attack the legal process. Every day on the news, his legal team can call the investigation into question, really slam legal individuals who are working on the other side of the case, which they've been doing all along. But I think this change in the legal team, especially with Giuliani coming on board, is a sign that they're planning to ramp that up. And that could be that we're getting closer and closer to the end of this, or closer and closer to a big event like a subpoena.
Right.
You know, all the Giuliani sound bites I've heard are on the Stormy Daniels matter. Mm-hmm. How do you see that? I mean, is there significant legal jeopardy there, or where is it?
It seems like, and in any other context, I would imagine it'd be much more in the way of political jeopardy. I mean, all of us sort of wake up every once in a while and think, if this were happening in any other time, that would be the story of the day. Now it's the story of just the day. But in terms of real legal jeopardy, there's obviously some risk there. The investigation into Michael Cohen, who was alleged to have paid the money to Stormy Daniels to pay her off and to keep her quiet, there's some actual legal risk there to Mr. Cohen, and anything that Mr. Cohen knows that he might be willing to offer in exchange for more lenient treatment. This is the way the federal prosecutor does its work. It finds the smaller fish and encourages them to give testimony against the bigger fish. So there is certainly legal risk there, but it's much less straightforward and much less within the scope of what everyone is expecting to come out of this investigation. So I think the risk there is probably still greater on the political front than it is on the legal front for the president, at least.
What do you make of the federal judge in the Manafort case pushing back on the questioning the jurisdiction of Mueller, whether he's exceeded his authority?
Well, the judge in Virginia, Judge Ellis, made some statements in court in dealing with what's the proper scope of this investigation. Should the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia be handling that case against Paul Manafort rather than the Special Counsel's Office, because it deals with incidents that happened in 2006 that really had, even by the government's own opinion, nothing really directly to do with what Mr. Mueller is supposed to be investigating. But if you look at the judge's comments on a whole, he also made some statements about recognizing that this is the way that the federal government tends to run investigations, that they find whatever information they find along the course of an investigation, and if it can be used to leverage additional information out of a witness like Mr. Manafort, then usually they go ahead and proceed with those charges in an effort to go toward where they want to go. The judge definitely expressed some displeasure with that. He said, all you're trying to do is get Mr. Manafort to sing. You don't really care about what he's done in this context. But the judge also appeared to recognize, at least tacitly, that that's business as usual for federal investigation, that that's usually how this works.
Now, the part of the case that appears to concern obstruction of justice, particularly for firing the former FBI director, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it, although again, we don't know what the legal team with Mueller has found yet. But that firing and obstruction of justice are a major charge, without a doubt, and that alone is enough to put a president's career in jeopardy and perhaps harm the party in November as well when it goes forward. Right now, it's been a lot of innuendo and potential charges and things of that sort, but when it becomes real, it is real to every person running for office. It's real to the party's ability to get policy through the Senate and the House. It becomes a massive mess for them.
Let's take a phone call. Baltimore City, this is Avis. Thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Hello. I
Hi.
just want to say that it's remarkable that we are sitting here as citizens and we don't, it looks crystal clear he is guilty. It's crystal clear. I mean, if you're not guilty, why not let people just research until they find out that you're innocent? It's very clear that he's guilty. And I think that every day when I listen to stuff about the investigation, it's incredible how many people give him an out.
Avis, thank you very much for the phone call. In the court of public opinion, are opinions set at this point? One side or the other?
It sort of looks that way, at least for now. But again, the real evidence, what the Mueller team has not yet really come out. But where it is very stable, as it seems like in the polls, those who love President Trump, that 40% or so that shifts from 42% to 38% in the polls stays the same. And it was true during the election as well. He was polling with 35-40% of the overall Republican vote. But the other 60% appears to be either on the fence or decidedly against the president. So it is stable in that sense, but how can it shift when real legal charges come down, if they do?
How tortured is the Republican Party right now?
I think they're extremely tortured. And we were talking about this together a little bit before, but they have a vice president who is a solid conservative in Mike Pence, who doesn't have these legal moral problems that are floating about him. The base of the Republican Party traditionally and the value system of the Republican Party values being championed through election after election are now in question. And again, the big question mark for every person running for office right now is, do you want President Trump to show up and campaign for you in Missouri in that Senate seat? Do you want him to show up in Florida with Governor Scott right now, who's facing a really tight election as well for U.S. Senate? I mean, you are in a position here where you need that base really, really badly to turn out, especially in a midterm election. But on the other hand, do you want to be associated with all of the additional baggage that the president has?
Back to the phones. Howard County, this is Myra. Myra, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Yes, my question concerns the authority of a president to act in a imperialistic type of governing. In other words, when Donald Trump fired the FBI director, he did it because he wanted the director to terminate the Russian investigation, primarily because the Russian interference on his election in November 2016 will taint for all times his elevation to be president. Thank you.
Myra, thank you very much. So, pretty succinct case. making the case that the firing was obstruction of justice, but how could you prove it?
Well, the problem is, well, I take the caller's point. The difficulty is that it presupposes the most fundamental dispute that anybody would have in trying that case, which is what was the reason that the president decided to fire James Comey?
And if the president gives 5 reasons, which one? And that was one of them.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's also a very interesting tension in terms of the players in all this, because you recall part of what the president said as justification for firing James Comey was rooted in a memorandum that was written by Rod Rosenstein, Deputy Attorney General, who he has now lambasted and even made noise about trying to fire.
But hasn't fired, interestingly.
But has not fired, exactly. And so he's sort of, it's interesting that he's sort of come to talk out of both sides of his mouth on that topic because he's relying on Rod Rosenstein's opinion when it comes to firing James Comey, and now calling his judgment into question and running the Mueller investigation. So it's an interesting tension.
Let's take a short break here. We will continue our conversation on the Mueller investigation of President Trump with more of your calls right after this.
Got an unused vehicle going nowhere? Donate it to the one place that can take you any place. Visit mpt.org/vehicles and support the programs you love on MPT.
The MPT app puts our programs right at your fingertips, so you can choose when to watch, what to watch, wherever you want to watch it. Download it now.
Are you turning 70 and a half this year? If so, you generally have to start spending down your retirement account. Even the minimum distribution can place you in a sticky situation. Luckily, you can now use your IRA to make tax-free gifts. Gifts up to $100,000 will never count as income, but always make a difference. That's icing on the cake.
Make your gift for this year before December 31st. Visit mpt.org/support.
This is a box that showed you a world beyond your own. It was just a box, but the world has changed, and so have we. And now the box can be almost any size or shape. And you decide what you want to explore. Anytime, any place. Break out of the box with PBS.
We are the curious.
Wow!
The adventurous.
Oh! Grr. Those venturing out for the first time.
And those who've never lost our sense of wonder.
Whoa.
You seen this?
We are the hungry.
The strong.
I must be the greatest!
The joyful.
A happy little cloud.
We believe there is always more we can uncover.
More we can explore.
We believe
in the capacity for goodness.
And the potential for greatness.
The torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans.
PBS.
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 Back live now. Let's go out to the phones. Joining us from Prince George's County is Ray. Ray, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Hi. Should the Democrats take the House and vote for impeachment, what would it take for the Senate, a Republican Senate, to actually oust the president?
Boy, that's a great question. Thank you, sir.
It would be,
if it's a Republican Senate at that point.
Yeah. If it's a Republican Senate, or even if it's a Democrat Senate, the supermajority that's needed to actually remove a president is enormous. I think it's 3/4. Boy, I need to go back to my American government class that I used to teach.
It's more than 50 votes.
But we can't even get cloture on regular bills coming through the Senate right now due to the filibuster reaching point of, like, say, 60 votes. I mean, so to get the president removed, it would take some absolutely huge evidence, and it would take the Republican Party deserting them in the Senate. And that's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. If this came out and looked really bad and the Republican Party's future was on the line, then the folks like Lindsey Graham and John McCain or any of the others could switch, but would
the
it
flip
be
side
enough?
of that is the bar to impeachment in the House is set quite low.
Yeah, it's lower, but also
just 50?
Yeah, no, okay, 50. Yeah, you're right. So there, it's just articles of impeachment, and it's simply the ability to essentially to prosecute the case in the Senate. Yeah.
And that's exactly the way it works in regular criminal prosecutions. The standard for charging is probable cause. The standard for conviction is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
It's designed to be that way so that people end up with their day in court after a very low-level decision has been made as to whether there's a basis to believe that they may have committed a crime.
Let's take a call from Alexandria. This is Jonathan. Jonathan, thank you for calling. Go ahead. Jonathan, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Yes, sir. What's your question?
The Rosenstein memo has been mentioned, but the content of that memo was rather different. What Rosenstein did was query a lot of preceding attorney generals or deputy attorney generals, and every one of them objected to the way Comey had handled the Clinton emails. And they took away the order of prosecution and so forth. And this was the bulk of what his memorandum said.
Jonathan, let me get a comment. Thank you for the phone call. So I mean, is that memo itself Exhibit A, if we get to that point, in a defense of Trump's decision?
It is to some extent, and the Trump administration has said as much, that President Trump wasn't the only one who thought that James Comey needed to go. Here's a memo from Rod Rosenstein. And Mr. Rosenstein has an excellent reputation. His judgment, his ethics have never been questioned by anybody before. He was U.S. Attorney here in Maryland. We were discussing this earlier. It was actually something that a lot of us in the legal community took great comfort in when he was named Deputy Attorney General, because he was known for having been such a straight arrow. And so it is certainly something that's going to go in Trump's favor, is that there is someone else, sort of this third party, even though he is part of the administration at this point, who had assembled some degree of evidence that Mr. Comey had not discharged his duties as FBI director the way one would want. So yes, it will certainly be one check in the legitimacy column for firing James Comey.
I want to ask if in your view, Mueller has made any mistakes here. The Trump loyalists see evidence of a conspiracy in the Justice Department, in the FBI, to lay a trap to start this investigatory process. And did Mueller feed into that perhaps by hiring so many staff people who have been, through the years, Democratic political donors, politically active to that degree?
I think that's really a hard thing to make stick, though, to some degree, because people, family members donate to different candidates. I think what we're seeing here is kind of what I was discussing a little bit before, is the idea is you have a slow, deliberative legal process, an investigation that takes a long time, and along the way you can find things to poke holes in politically, and the political process moves so much faster than an investigation. I think one thing that some people are talking about today that might potentially be a mistake, but even then, the care of the investigation is what leads to this being a mistake or not, is when we're getting closer and closer to the election. If it's October and Mueller and his team decide at that time to do indictments or to release the evidence, that's right before the election, and he would be accused of meddling in the election like Comey did with the Anthony Weiner emails and things of that sort. Or do you do it now?
There'd be some irony in that, wouldn't there?
Yeah. Or do you go silent for a period of time, let the election happen, and then come back in January or December, election's over, and now the big stuff hits, if there is big stuff there.
Yeah. Maybe I ought to drop the report now. We'll see. Let's get one more phone call. Howard County, this is Lynn. Lynn, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Yes. this is about judgment again. President Trump has made his cabinet like a kitchen cabinet. People who he believed should have these things. And then he goes on like he's on television. You're fired. You're fired. The thing is, he said he was going to make America great. And then the judgment he has, he decides to get rid of people.
Lynn, thank you for the phone call. We're short on time here. Just the whole optics of the current situation.
It's tough. I mean, there's always changes during an administration, but I think these have been pretty unprecedented, and there's been a lot of question by Americans about the stability of the cabinet, the stability of the entire federal executive branch to some degree because of that constant turnover. It hasn't helped. Let's just put it that way.
Roger Hartley's Dean of the College of Public Affairs, University of Baltimore. Adam Ruther with Rosenberg, Martin, Greenberg. Thanks for all the time. The great insights. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for joining us for Direct Connection. We're back Thursday with Your Money in Business. What can we learn about securing our financial futures from people working in the gig economy? Join us for that Thursday at 7. Now, for all of us at MPT, I'm Jeff Salkin. Thanks for watching and have a good night.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.